Welcome back to Conversations with Archbishop Kurtz. Brian Reynolds told you from over at the cathedral that we would be in the History Center across the street, and here we are. Welcome to the Archdiocesan History Center. I'm very pleased to introduce two wonderful guests. First of all, Father Clyde Crews. Father Clyde is a retired theology professor at Bellarmine University and now is the university historian and archivist. Welcome, and thank you for your presence. And Father Dale Cieslik, and Father Dale, a busy man also, is first of all pastor of St. Francis Xavier Parish in Mount Washington, pastor of All Saints Parish in Taylorsville and in Spencer County, and also the Archdiocesan Archivist, a busy man. So thank you both very much for your presence here today. Let's get right into it. Father Clyde, tell us a little bit about the history of Catholics within Kentucky.
Well, this is really an amazing diocese, and the words immediately come to mind for me. First one's kind of an odd word, is inland. This was the first inland off the coast in the United States. Baltimore was the first big diocese. And then the Pope in 1808 carved out of it Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Bardstown. Bardstown, from that jurisdiction, 40 other dioceses plus have been carved out since then. So it's very historic in that sense. A second word that pops into my head is leadership. This was an incubator for Catholicism in the Upper South and the Midwest. For example, the lay leaders really, in effect, founded some of the parishes in what we call the Holy Land. And the priests came, of course, they were very hard to get. So these lay people gathered together and asked for a priest. And then in addition to the lay leaders, we had the sisters who founded some of the first sisterhoods in America. 3 large groups. Within one generation, they had 260 women committed here in the frontier. Wow. And they were serving in what we would today call education, healthcare, social service. And then, of course, the clerical leadership. 8 of Flaget's priests became bishops, and we were educating priests for many other parts of the country. So that's a second word comes to mind is leadership. And then the third one that comes to mind is education. These people had a passion, these early Catholics, for education. And they created, within 10 years of the foundation of the diocese, 3 colleges. And they founded a group of academies. And so they had this deep, deep sense that they had to be effective educators, and they were people of intellect and thought as well as faith.
Wow. I have a fourth word, and that is pioneer. No, it's amazing. Yeah. And we're surrounded, aren't we, by that? This museum has such a richness of the history. Father Dale, tell us a little background about how the museum came about.
Well, in order to capture the story and artifacts that Father Clyde was just speaking about, this building itself was built in the 1950s. It was acquired by the cathedral in the year 2000 with the great assistance of Jim Patterson, who was a parishioner at the cathedral. And after that, he did some really updating in here as far as color and stuff. And then asked Father Bill Fichterman, who was pastor at the time, whether there would be could be used for. And Father Bill asked me if there would be a few artifacts that I could show.
Wow, a few?
A few. Well, that's how it started out.
Exactly.
Anyway, you'll see it eventually took over the whole floor, okay, which I'm proud of. But with that too, in our humble beginnings of trying to create the museum too, we had some guests come in and some volunteers had some money, and then helped us begin to plan. And then one of our priests, Father Jim Hendricks, was a great benefactor of the museum itself too, and he himself was a co-owner of the vestments that we have in one of our rooms. So we got Peter LaPaglia from Nashville, Tennessee, came in, gave us a design of how to lay it out, and then we adapted most of what he said. So we had it dedicated in 2006 by Archbishop Kelly. It was in October, and then about 2 years later, you yourself dedicated phase 2 that we had here likewise. So that's some history.
Wow, well thank you. We're all eager to see it, and in fact, it really is beautiful. My hope is that the viewers will have a chance not only to see it through the screen, but also come and make an appointment. And we'll give some information a little later in the program about that. Hey, let's begin the tour, and let's start right now. Here we are in a special room dedicated to the life of our first bishop, Bishop Flaget.
Well, if I may step forward and say that Benedict Joseph Flagey was one of those amazing people on the American frontier. He came from France. He was an exile from the French Revolution. First came to this country in 1792. Of course, he arrived here as bishop in 1811, although the diocese was founded in 1808. And he reigned as bishop for 50 years. In 1841, the diocese transferred from Bardstown to Louisville. He was an ecumenical leader for his age, and he was one of the people who brought forward the leadership and all these other people that we talked about earlier.
Father Dale, you might want to tell us about some of the artifacts in the room.
I'd be honored to do so too. We've gathered artifacts from several different places, and many of them are gifts from Bishop Flagey's family. The top shelf here in this cabinet, you'll see in there that there's a picture of him in the background, which is an oil that's hung at the church where he's baptized in Boulogne, France. And we had that enlarged so we could put it in this because he shows him as a young bishop. His pectoral cross from 1810 as well as his first episcopal ring are featured here likewise, and a lock of his hair, which is in the back. A glass that is a crystal piece was given to us, brought back a few years ago by Father Pepper Elliott, who visited in France, and they wanted us to have that. Lastly, in this cabinet too is a wax seal of Bishop Flagey's. The red stick itself is the wax. You heat that up, you imprint that on official documents. And if you come this way, we'll come over to another cabinet. And in this cabinet, too, we feature on these two particular shelves some of Bishop Flagey's books, of which we will discuss later, and also, too, a ring that belonged to him and a picture of him, an oil painting that is at Georgetown University. We authenticated the oil painting and realized in that picture we found whose ring this was. So we discovered it that way, and it belonged to Bishop Flagey. The second shelf is very, very important because we have a clock, a seal wax made of amethyst stone, as well as an episcopal ring. And the episcopal ring was what he used for ceremonies. These were the two parts here, and his original ring was brought to us by his great grandnieces who live in France. They brought them to us in the year 2003, and then they were immediately turned over to the archives so we could use them for display.
Well, thank you, Father Dale. You know, we'll hear more about Bishop Flagey when we finish in the room dedicated to his library. But let's now go and see some other items that are here in the museum.
This particular cabinet is one of 6 that we have here in the museum. Also about this cabinet, it has some of our oldest artifacts that are most intimate to us in the fact that all these items were brought over by Father Charles Neerinks, who was one of the earliest priests in the diocese. You'll see a wooden head that was carved and brought over in 1785. You'll see also, too, some vestments and etc. that was used when he traveled by horse to different spots to have Mass. Also, a traveling desk that he put on that same horse, whereas he kept papers and pens and etc. like that, as well as part of his diaries. We have a book stand with a book dated 1786. As well as we have a statue, too, of St. Francis de Germo, who also was a especially favorite saint of Father Neerinks, and as well as the cross that was used at Holy Cross Church itself, and that was when it was first built, first brick church in the diocese. This is loaned kind of often to different people just to highlight when we have history gatherings. Now we have the opportunity now to visit the room that houses the Mother Catherine Spalding information that we keep on her.
Well, this space in the museum honors especially the sisters who have been here in the Archdiocese these many, many years. And in particular, it features the habit of the early historical habit of the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth. And in particular, it honors Catherine Spalding, who was the first superior of those sisters. Now, she was truly an amazing woman who came from Maryland, and at the age of 19, she became the first superior of the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth. In the city of Louisville alone, she was responsible for founding a school, which became Presentation in 1831, the oldest Catholic school in the city of Louisville. She founded a hospital, which eventually became St. Joseph's Hospital, and most people remember it from being on Eastern Parkway. and she founded orphanages. She was famous for going down to the wharf and finding children who had been orphaned, often on the voyage, and taking them home to the orphanage and caring for them. So she was really a fascinating woman, a woman of real character. A masterful biography has been done by Sister Mary Ellen Doyle of the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth. Later this year, you'll see a statue of Mother Catherine appearing on the cathedral grounds, because it will be dedicated later this year, 2015. But as I say, she represents the many sisters who have served of the many communities throughout the Archdiocese of Louisville and its very long history.
The section of the museum that we're in right now honors particularly Archbishop Kelly in the fact that we have with us this day his pallium, which is the outward sign of his being the Metropolitan Archbishop of Louisville. Not a lot of bishops have such a garment, but it's very important for us to have his, because that way we can teach what metropolitan status is in the diocese and what that means. Archbishop Kurtz, who is our current Archbishop, likewise has a pallium given to him by the Holy Father. I have also featured here too a picture of Archbishop Kelly when he's wearing his pallium, which is at a very high liturgical function, which was the elevation of the St. Joseph Proto-Cathedral into a basilica. And as you see behind in the picture is the Umberlina, which is a sign of that being there, as well as to the left of Archbishop Kelly is Bishop Maloney, who was the first titular bishop of Bardstown itself. And behind me over my shoulder is a papal document that named Archbishop Kelly as Archbishop of Louisville. He came to us as Auxiliary Bishop of Washington, D.C., and a former Secretary General of the NCCB, known at that time too. With the pallium, likewise too, there are different pins that are worn. There's 3 of them, and they were given to him by Cardinal Bernardine as a gift.
Well, here we are in our final stop in the museum, and we're with the library of Bishop Flaget. Father Clyde, tell us a little bit.
Well, as you can tell when you say library and see library, this was a scholarly man, Bishop Flaget. And he also knew, in addition to wanting his own books, that if he was going to be founding the seminary, which he did, and was going to be staffing these schools, he's going to need a lot of books. So the story is that he went to Europe and sometimes or sent other people to Europe to beg for books from libraries, and often they would give him their old castaways, which at the time was not so nice. But now that means we have some very old editions all around us here. And I think Father Dale can elaborate a lot more on that.
Keeping the library up, some editions of other priests' libraries have come to it also, so we kind of keep all things in common into one and still name it as Bishop Flaget. And corresponding with Bishop Flaget Library is the Simon Broutet Library in Vincennes, and they were much of a lending library to one another, as we can see by documents. They will tell us that too. In this room, likewise too, we have some small cabinetry on both sides, and in these cabinetries it has highlights in regards to our bishops, such as in this cabinet, Bishop David wrote a catechism, and we have a copy of that here. Bishop Martin John Spalding, who became Archbishop of Baltimore. We have also in this cabinet too, Father Cronin, who is an administrator of the diocese as we awaited for Bishop O'Donoghue's arrival. Father Hallett wrote the history of Old St. Thomas Seminary in Bardstown, an old priest pipe, as it were, there too. And we have other cabinets that have such documentation too. We have likewise too a picture of Monsignor Boucher, who is the Vicar General of the Archdiocese, as well as Rector of the Cathedral. Father Boucher was quite an inventor, and he, on his time, would go ahead and invent different items. He invented the telescope, which is above the door here too, that we'll see, you can see as you come to the library or in the museum, that he put together. I have the receipts from that of lenses he bought in Chicago. Also too, we have the relics, partial display of relics that belong in the gathering of all the archives too, and we wanted to show what some of those were too. As well as we have a picture of Pope Pius VII, who created us as a diocese in the year 1808, as Father Clyde had said.
Boy, you've given us such a rundown here. Father Dale, thank you. Before we end this program, and I hate to do it, but our time is getting near the end, tell us a little bit, those of who would like to make a visit here, and I hope many will, we'll put it on the screen, but give us a little information about visits to the museum.
Thank you very much. To the cathedral parishioners, some of them are docents, and they volunteer their time on Sundays from 10:30 to 2 o'clock, and then during the week, they can call the cathedral to speak to Angela Wiggins, the secretary. Groups can schedule times throughout the week to come. Age groups from young people to seniors, they're all welcome.
Well, I can assure you, you will not be disappointed. If you make plans and provisions to come here, we're just giving you a little bit of a taste of all that is here. Father Clyde, thank you so much for your presence today. Father Dale, thanks so much, and for not only the tour you've given us, but the wonderful commitment you've made to the life of the Archdiocese and the rich history that is ours. Thank you, who are the viewers, for being part of this special edition of Conversations with Archbishop Kurtz. Please join us next month for our next edition, and have a blessed, blessed month.